Good afternoon. It is 4 o'clock on June 2nd, and I'd like to call this virtual Board of Education meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everyone, and at this time we will do a roll call. Myself, Nancy Roche, Kristin Morrissey.
Present.
Wes McCall.
Present.
Tom Cleveland.
I'm here.
Darla Light.
I'm here.
And Superintendent Jeff Bearden.
I'm here.
Now would everyone please stand for the pledge. Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You have before you a recommended agenda. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
No, ma'am, no recommended changes.
Hearing none, is there a motion to approve as published?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Tom and a second by Kristin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, motion passes. The only presentation this afternoon is the draft of the Forsyth County School Guidelines for Opening Schools presented by Dr. Bearden.
Thank you, Nancy, and good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon to everyone in our community who might be tuning in today. I want to share with you the draft guidelines that we are presenting tonight to the Board of Education for reopening schools on August 6th. August 6th is our first day scheduled back for students. I want to be very clear before I start this presentation. This is very much in draft form. We wanted to put information out this early with 2 months before schools reopening to make sure our Board of Education had an opportunity to review the guidelines, for them to ask any questions or make any comments they may have. But also we want to hear from our public. We are going to go live with these guidelines tomorrow. We'll release them on our social media, and there will be an opportunity for our public to give us feedback, and we hope you will consider doing so. As we have said from the beginning of this pandemic, we're all in this together. You know, we got to work together as staff members, as students, as parents and community, make sure we're serving our children to the very best of our ability and giving them the education they very much deserve. So I want to thank you, our entire community, for all you have done to support us throughout this process, and encourage you to stay involved, stay engaged, and let's work on this together. Tonight, I want to share with you, my staff and I are looking at 3 possibilities for schools opening on August 6th. The first one would be opening in a full-time online virtual experience. I think we would all agree that is the least desirable option at this point. I'm very proud of how our staff performed, how well our students were engaged. I'm so thankful of our parents, of how much you helped us fourth quarter, but we all know our students will be best served if they're back in school. And so we have to plan for this because we don't know what the data will show by August 6th. We have to be prepared, but we all, at least on my staff, consider this to be worst case scenario. I'm also cautiously optimistic when I say this. I also think, as we sit here on June 2nd, it's the least likely scenario at this time as well. And I hope that that trend continues. The second option we're considering is what we're calling a hybrid. Now, what a hybrid would mean would be that about half of our students would attend school face-to-face on any given day, and the other half would be learning virtually. We believe a hybrid is doable as long as we have guidelines in place, but I will admit to you, I think a hybrid would be very challenging for our teachers. There's no question it would be disruptive for our families. The hybrid that we're talking about is the first couple of days of school, we would probably have half of our students attend for what we would call kind of an orientation 2 days. And then the second 2 days, we'd have the other half attend for that orientation. And then after that, we would get into what we're calling an A week and a B week, where students attend school Monday through Friday, face-to-face, half of our students, and the other half are learning from home during that week. And then we flip-flop the following week and continue to do that until we can go back to school full-time face-to-face. Again, that's not a desirable option. It's more desirable than full-time virtual, but it's not the option that we think would be best to serve our students. The third option we're looking at is a regular schedule with guidelines in place to try to ensure the safety of our students and staff. And I'm going to review those guidelines in a few moments. This option, we believe, is the most desirable option. And again, as we sit here on June 2nd, I think it's the most likely option. I'm cautiously optimistic it's the most likely option as we sit here today. But again, our staff is preparing for all three of these possibilities. Now, the other question I get asked often is, when will we know? When are you going to give us an answer for sure? Tonight, I will tell you, I believe we will be able to give you an answer by the middle part of July. I can't give you a specific date, but I would say mid-July. The reason we have to wait so late, there's several reasons, and I want to go over those right now. Number one, the legislature will reconvene next week on June 11th. They have about 10 days left in their session. They still have to adopt a budget for the following school year. As of right now, we are being told to plan for a 14% reduction in state aid for education. For Forsyth County schools, that equates to more than $35 million. That is a huge cut in our revenue. So if that happens, and we do have a cut of $35 million, I am going to have to submit a revised calendar, student calendar and work calendar for our employees to our Board of Education. We cannot absorb that type of loss, $35 million, without reducing days for our staff. It's just simply not possible. I have said publicly, and I will say again tonight, I have two goals that I want to meet when I present our budget to the Board of Education for their consideration. One is, I want to avoid a reduction in force. Any employee in good standing in Forsyth County schools, we want them to keep their job. That's goal number one. Goal number two is we do not want to increase class sizes. Those are our two primary goals moving forward. We cannot accomplish those two goals if we lose $35 million in funding without amending the calendar. It's just not possible. I cannot submit a budget for board consideration or a revised calendar for board consideration until I get the revenue numbers from the state. And we will not get those till probably the end of June. And then once we get them, we'll have to finalize our budget proposal and finalize that amended calendar. And that's why I said earlier, I think by mid-July, we will have an answer for which scenario we will start school with come August 6th. I also want to remind our community, and you may have seen this in the news, the Georgia Department of Education, in partnership with the Georgia Department of Health, revised some considerations and recommendations for schools reopening this fall. That was released yesterday. The guidelines I'm going to present to the board tonight and to our community is very similar to the document that was created by the Department of Education in partnership with the Department of Health. I actually feel good about that because we started working on our draft long before that document was released, and it's very similar. The other thing I want to remind you of, Governor Kemp and State Superintendent Woods has also appointed what they're calling 6 working groups to come up with additional recommendations for schools reopening. That work will also not be completed till the end of June. So there's a lot of moving parts right now, and we have to get all of that information, the information from the working groups, the information from our legislature on the budget, before we can finalize plans for schools reopening in August. And I do apologize for it being late notice, but there's really nothing we can do about that. We have to wait till we have all the information I would say the good news on waiting is, the data will look differently in July than it does today. Hopefully it'll look more favorably in July than it does today. And so that gives us more information to follow that data. But while all this is going on, I want to reassure you, the administration of Forsyth County Schools are working on those 3 separate plans to make sure we're prepared for whatever we have to deal with come August. And again, those 3 plans, full-time virtual to start the school year, a hybrid, or full-time face-to-face. And we're hoping for the full-time face-to-face. So again, what I'm going to present are the guidelines in a moment. Very much a draft. It's a beginning. And we wanted to put it out there now because we want you to look at it. We want your feedback. And there's no doubt we're going to be revising this document over time. So let me go ahead and start with the guidelines. And you see them on the screen right there. And I'm going to go bullet point by bullet point. And excuse me for reading some of this. I know you can read it, but there's some things I want to point out as we go along. Point number 1, the school nurse at all of our schools will be the main COVID-19 point of contact for our community. We plan on doing periodic health screenings of students, employees, random temperature checks. We have already purchased at least 10 thermometers, the contactless thermometers for each of our schools. So it'll be very easily for us to do random temperature checks of students and staff. As of right now, the Department of Health's recommendation is if a student or staff member has a temperature of 100.4 or higher, they will immediately be isolated and sent home. And so again, we will have the capability, we've already ordered the thermometers in advance to be able to do random testing of a lot of people on any given day. The next step in the process is if we do have a student or staff member who is symptomatic and they have the test and we find out they do have COVID-19, the next step is we notify the Department of Health and we follow whatever guidance they give us, including the possibility of closures. Now, it's possible that if we have a student or staff member that tests positive, perhaps we only have to close one school for a period of time, thoroughly sanitize that school and prepare it for reopening. It could be the Department of Health says, based on the information we give us, we have to close a cluster of schools. Same thing, sanitize those schools, get them ready to reopen. Our worst case scenario, we have to close the entire district for a period of time. But know that we work closely with the Georgia Department of Health, and we will follow the guidelines that are given to us at that time. Next screen, please, Mike. Well, point number 2, and this seems obvious, but it needs to be stated in our guidelines. All students and employees must stay home if they have COVID-19 symptoms, if they've tested positive for COVID-19, or had close contact with a person with COVID-19 within the last 14 days. Employees, parents, guardians are asked to self-report to the school nurse. As I said in that previous bullet, your school nurse, our school nurse, is a key contact with the Department of Health. So we need self-reporting if someone is found to be diagnosed with the virus. At this point, we would require a physician's release before that student or staff member would be allowed to return to school. If students are forced to quarantine, obviously they will have access to their education through its learning. And I also want to make this very clear. Over the years, the history of public education, we've put a premium on attendance, and we all know how important attendance is. However, in the environment we're living in today, we do not want to put a premium on attendance. We want sick children, sick staff members to stay at home. Forsyth County Schools will not have perfect attendance awards for the 2021 school year. Next bullet, please. We are also going to require frequent hand washing breaks that will take place daily in all of our elementary schools, where students will be required to wash their hands for a minimum of 20 seconds. There will be several of those throughout the course of the day. Middle and high school students and employees will be reminded to wash their hands throughout the day for the same length of time. All of the folks attending school, whether student or staff member, will be reminded to cover coughs and sneezes with a tissue and place that tissue immediately in the trash, and also to wash their hands. Next slide, please. Hand sanitizer stations, and we've already gone through the process of purchasing a number of these. Hand sanitizer stations will be available throughout each building. Students and staff are also encouraged to bring their own hand sanitizer from home. Obviously, that's up to parents if they feel comfortable allowing their children to bring their own. But we do ask that kids not share with other children with the hand sanitizer. Also, to promote COVID-19 measures, we will have signs posted throughout our buildings in highly visible locations. Schools will broadcast daily reminders about the importance of personal hygiene. Schools and departments will develop a schedule for increased cleaning and disinfection. And I want to tell our community right now, we have about 18 months of cleaning supplies already on hand. Our facilities and purchasing department was very proactive this spring to make sure we were well equipped for the start of the new school year. So we are prepared. Our ventilation systems will be monitored on a regular basis to ensure proper operation and the increased circulation of outdoor air as much as possible. Buses will be cleaned and disinfected after every bus route. Once again, our transportation department and purchasing department, they've been very proactive this spring. We have the supplies on hand that we need so that our buses can be disinfected after every single bus route. Students and employees may wear masks, but at this point, they will not be required. And the reason I'm saying at this point, I can't tell you by the 1st of August if we won't be directed by the Department of Health, Department of Education, or the governor's office that we will be required to wear a mask. But at this point, we're not being told that we're going to have to. And so if we're not being told we have to, we will make it optional. And students and employees who choose to wear a mask will bring their own. They will not be provided by the school or the district. Next slide, please. Based upon classroom configuration and to the extent possible, students' desk will face in the same direction, and students seated at tables will sit on the same side of the table. The sharing of items that are difficult to clean or disinfect will be discouraged. This is not part of this slide, but I want to go ahead and say this now. I said it at our parent and community advisory on Friday. We are going to be encouraging bring your own technology. Again, parents, you have to be comfortable with that. We know it's a case-by-case situation, but the more of our students that bring their own devices, the less we will have to share devices, and it makes it a lot easier on us in terms of sanitizing the devices owned by the district. So parents, I would ask you to be thinking about that right now. If you're comfortable allowing your child to bring their own device to school so they do not have to share one of ours, that would be greatly appreciated. Also wanted to say, while ensuring the safety of our children, to the extent possible, students will eat in classrooms. Now, that doesn't mean all students will eat in classrooms every day. Our cafeterias are quite large. Our cafeterias enable us to spread out. Building principals will work with their leadership teams on figuring out how to make that happen. But what we're trying to avoid, and one of the recommendations from the Department of Health, is to avoid large groups of students gathering in one area. So that's why I say, to the extent possible, we will be eating in classrooms and spreading out as much as we can. Next comment, the traditional water fountains we have will be closed. We do have water fill stations in some of our schools. Those that we have will be open so students can fill their water bottles. But we will encourage students and staff members to bring their own water from home so students are not sharing water fountains. Non-essential student movement throughout the school day will be limited. Obviously, we can't have students not move throughout the school day. It's not possible to conduct school that way, but our principals will be working on plans on to limit that as much as possible. Obviously, recess is important. We want our kids to get outdoors, but we may have to limit the number of students gathered in any one particular area, and we also may have to limit equipment that students, or playground equipment that students play on, just because it'd be very difficult for us to keep all those appropriately sanitized. Next bullet, please. Non-essential visitors, volunteers, and activities involving external groups or organizations will be limited. In lieu of field trips, assembly, special performances, school-wide meetings or events, including open house and curriculum nights, virtual activities will be pursued. The reason we're saying that, once again, one of the recommendations from the Department of Health is to limit gatherings, to limit non-essential visitors into facilities. And so we need to follow that recommendation, and we will very much do so. If we are in a situation where it's essential that someone from the outside be in our building, we have the ability to check their temperature before we allow them in, to make sure their temperature meets that threshold of 100.4 or less. Parent, guardian, teacher conferences. At this point, we're also saying will be held virtually if possible. You know, who knows how things might change in the fall, but I just want to announce, parents, you need to kind of plan on that. When we get to parent-teacher conferences, those might be virtual. We are following the guidance from the Georgia High School Association in terms of school athletics. You may have seen that students are allowed to return Monday, June 8th in a limited fashion for some weight training purposes, and we are following GHSA recommendations on that. Next bullet, please, Mike. Oh, that was the last one. So with that, I want to give our Board of Education an opportunity to ask any questions, make any comments. And again, just a reminder to our public, very much a draft. We want to hear from you. We want your feedback. It'll be available for you tomorrow. Go on our website and then please give us your feedback. Let us know what you're thinking. Board members, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I'll jump in, Jeff. First of all, I think that was well thought out, and I appreciate you took time to kind of step through all the cleaning and the sanitary topics. We talked earlier, if you could just touch on, again, just when it comes to notifying parents, we have privacy rules, and I know you talked about the Department of Health notifying if a teacher or a student is ill. Can you just lightly touch on our challenges as far as privacy and what we would do if a student or a teacher is suspected or confirms that they have COVID?
Yeah, it's a great point, Kristin. Again, you know, I made the point earlier in the presentation, you know, we're all in this together. Part of being together is asking parents and staff members to come forward if a parent, a student, or a staff member finds out that they've been diagnosed with COVID-19. The only way we can deal with this and react appropriately and accordingly is if we're dealing with the information. And we have to rely on folks to come forward and let us know that, hey, my child tested positive. That enables us to get with the Department of Health, tell them what happened, and then go through their processes in terms of identifying who may have had contact with that individual so that those people can take appropriate safety measures. Again, we have to work together on this, and we are going to be relying on the cooperation of our employees and our public to let us know if they're dealing with a situation in their household.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeff.
Dr. Bearden, I also, oh, sorry, go ahead, Tom.
No, go ahead, Wes.
I just
Wes,
also
you go
want
first.
to say, I just also want to say thank you to you and your staff. I know that you have a lot of staff on the presentation today, and you guys have really taken your time to look at this and go through every possibility. I know that over the last couple of weeks, we have seen a variety of suggestions and recommendations from a variety of different groups. And I think you guys have done a really good job of narrowing it down to what's going to be good for Forsyth County and our community. Real quick, what are your thoughts if I am a parent and I am not comfortable at this time to send my students to school? I think that you're going to have a plan with that, or what's your initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Wes. Right now, fortunately, with our Forsyth Virtual Academy, we have that ability for students to attend full-time virtually grades 6 through 12. And there's also Georgia Virtual that students could take advantage of. That's a 6 through 12 opportunity. As of today, we do not have K-5 as part of our Forsyth Virtual. So, we're talking internally about, if we need to do that, what that would look like, how we would make that happen, because that's not in place currently. And to be honest with you, I don't know of too many places out there that has a virtual for K-5. And the reason for it is, I think we can all understand the maturity level of a K-5 child would make it very difficult to learn full-time virtually. You would need a lot of support from home in order to be able to make that happen. And for parents in our community, parents of K-5 students, I'm sure they would attest, that last quarter was really challenging for children just because of their age, are not as independent learners as older children are. So that's why you don't see a lot of virtual offerings K-5 right now. But we are talking about that internally to make sure that if that demand is there, that we have a plan in place to try to meet it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tom, you had a question or comment, I think.
Yeah, I did. The guidelines we did are for partial and complete openings. And I just wanted to reiterate, these are very preliminary. They're very open for change, as you said many times. And one thing to make the community aware, because I know there's a good many community watching today, a lot of this is a bigger decision than we've made in a long time. It includes more moving parts. Everything from the president to the CDC to the governor to the Department of Education in Georgia to the House Representatives and Senate. There are a lot of people maintaining the direction of this COVID crisis. And so while this sounds like it's coming from us, this is guidance we've been given, and we then put it together and started working on our own plans to hopefully show some leadership in this world, trying to do something. So we do want to hear input on this and look at what it's going to look like and get a sense. I know our survey results have come in, and we've been scouring over the comments, and they seem to be very polarizing. With some people, I think there's still a lot of fear out there with COVID, and trying to understand what's the next step and how we do this. So the next month and a half will be very critical to hopefully solidifying where we're headed. And with these guidelines to start with, gives us a place to start. So that's just more my comment.
Yeah, thank you for that. And, comment I made to our parent and community advisory group on Friday, I think we all recognize this is one we're probably never going to get 100% agreement on what is the right thing to do. But I just ask that, in spite of the differences that, folks may have, the differences of opinions, let's just pledge to continue to work together. Let's be respectful of one another in the various opinions that we have. And, we're going to do our best to put together a plan that will best meet the needs of our students. And as I said earlier, there are really three options that we feel that are on the table right now. And it's incumbent upon us to be prepared for any of those options. But we're not doing this work in isolation. And I never want our parents, our community, to think that we are. We need their partnership. We need their help. We need their support. We need their feedback.
Jeff, one of reasons I think it could be wise to open up in person in the fall. When COVID hit, we were starting the fourth quarter of the semester. Teachers had a routine in place. They knew their students. We were nearing the end of the year. And so we were already in a system. Starting out the fall, so we have students that'll be going into middle school, into high school for the first time. In kindergarten, they don't know their teachers yet. They don't have a routine in place. Getting into school, assessing where the students are at, getting to know their teachers and setting that routine would be a good start. If there was a second wave that happened later in the year and we had to then go online because of that, at least those relationships would be established. The teachers would have a chance to not only look at the students and assess where they're at, whether they needed to play catch up, but also that social emotional time to see what there might be some concerns there. I just think that in-person time could be valuable if things did happen to resurface later on where we had to go online. Starting in the year, right off the bat online would be completely different in the first semester where we did in the fourth semester this year.
That's such a great point, Kristin, and we've talked about that, and you mentioned relationships. That is absolutely the key, and we are going to be stressing that to our teachers when school starts. Hopefully, face to face, whether it's everybody or if it's a hybrid. Those relationships are so important. It's the most important thing we can do, so that in the event that we get into the fall or winter and there's another significant outbreak and we're forced for the entire district to move into a virtual environment, those relationships, those routines are in place, and it'll be a much more seamless transition. One thing I did not mention in this presentation, and I'm so glad you brought it up, part of our planning in the school system, not only is, we're looking at the 3 options for the fall, we also are planning for, okay, what happens if we go out again for an extended period of time? And I'm so appreciative of all the comments. We had 17,000 people respond to our survey, 17,000. And that's a lot of data for us to go through, but it's important because we're taking all that data and working with our teaching and learning department, and we're looking at, okay, where are some areas where we performed really well? And where are some areas where if we're out again for an extended period of time, we need to improve upon? So we're sifting through all that information right now. So concurrently, we are also making plans around, if we're out again for an extended period of time, what that may look like. Part of that, and I'll share with you tonight, when we went to block scheduling fourth quarter, when we made that change, we got a lot of positive feedback at our middle schools and high schools for making that change. And so because of that feedback, our plans right now, if we get into next school year and we're out for an extended period of time, it makes sense to me we go back to block for middle and high school because that was so well received by students, staff, and parents. So that's an example of feedback we get from our community. And trust me, we heard from a number of students too, and I'm so glad we did, because it's their education and we need to hear from them. Their voice is important. And so knowing that block works best for students in a virtual environment, that was good information for us to have as we plan for the future.
I think Wes and our students are jumping up and down.
Jeff, you mentioned the Department of Education and public health guidelines that were out. I just want to make sure that we have a link to that on our website also, because if you look at it, it's like, compared to, you have a couple pages here, but I think it's 11 or 12 pages, and it really goes into the detail of what these different plans mean. And, it's like, okay, the hybrid, more definition on that, also full-time, but with all the guidelines that they would come up with. So I really recommend parents to go to that also, even before they comment, to learn some more about, all these different plans that are out there that we've.
Yeah, we can certainly do that, because when we put the Forsyth County Schools guidelines up tomorrow, we can attach a link to that. But I want to be really clear. Those are suggestions. We are being afforded, and I so appreciate this, we are being afforded the opportunity to create our own locally. So, and we are doing that. Obviously, that's a great guide to use to see what the Department of Education and Department of Health is saying. And if you compare the two, their guidelines versus what I presented tonight, you'll see a lot of similarities, but it's not going to be exact. And it doesn't have to be exact. We're able to tailor that to meet the needs of our community, which I think is the right thing to do. We haven't heard, Darla, did you have a comment or a question?
I'm here. No, the only comment I have is the hybrid. If we have to do that, I know we have to do what we have to do, but it does give me a little bit of heartburn because I just think it would be a huge, huge burden on the teachers. You know, if they're in class all day and then they got to answer emails from people that weren't there that day and go back, I don't know how we will work that out, but I do think that that's going to be extremely hard on teachers.
No doubt. And I'm going to make this comment. I've said it this morning in the leadership meeting, and I'll say it publicly. The only way for Forsyth County Schools, at least in my opinion, the only way I would recommend a hybrid is if I was directed to do so. If I were told by the Department of Education, the governor's office, that we can only have 50% of our students on campus at any one time, that's the only way we're going to hybrid. For the reasons you really pointed out, Darla, it would be incredibly challenging for teachers. It would be also very challenging for parents. I mean, I'm speaking directly to our working parents out there, to be in a position where your child's attending school for 1 week and then they're at home the following week. We get logistically that's tough for our parents. So we want to try to avoid that and will avoid it. But if we're forced to do so, we're going to be prepared for it.
Are there any further questions?
Yeah, I want to comment. There was a point made about our services to our special needs population. I just wanted to say I was just incredibly proud of our special education department and the work they did over the spring, trying to provide those services for our students. Our special ed department is working all summer long on plans on when we get back to school to make sure, you know, any gaps that are in place, that we're taking care of those gaps. There'll be a lot of meetings to make sure that plans are in place for that population of students. I know our director, Sarah Taylor's online. Sarah, I hate to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. Anything you want to add to that in terms of planning for our students with disabilities?
Thank you, Dr. Bearden. I'll just also share, as he was expressing, how hard our staff has worked to make sure that we're trying to meet the students' needs as best as possible. While we absolutely identified that this is virtually does not meet the needs of all of our students, and we do hope and are excited about the possibility of coming back face to face. I do meet weekly with the other Metro special education directors across the state and with the Georgia Department of Ed quite frequently, as we get additional input from all of them and the supports that they are providing. So we are, as Dr. Bearden said, are making plans to meet the students as soon as we open the doors in August, and we are looking forward to it. And we appreciate all the parent input that we have gotten over these past couple of weeks. Thanks.
Yeah, and I would say the same is true for our English second language students. We have a number of those as well. This was a very challenging experience for those kids and those families, but our staff really stepped up to the plate and did a tremendous job. And again, planning is happening all summer long, again, to make sure we identify, you know, if there are gaps in place, standards we need to reteach when school starts in the fall, that we're prepared to do so. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Nancy, I'll turn it back over to you to back to the agenda. And again, to the public who's watching right now, and I know we have quite a few of you online, thank you for your support. Thank you for working with us, and we look forward to getting your feedback.
Thank you, Dr. Bearden, and also to the staff for all the work the hard work you put in to get this document together. At this time, do we have a motion to go into executive session for personnel per our affidavit?
So moved by Tom.
Second by Kristin.
We have a motion by Tom and a second by Kristin. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, motion passes. Okay, to ensure everyone has made it back to our public meeting, we'll take a roll call attendance. Myself, Nancy Roche, Kristin Morrissey,
Present.
Wes McCall,
Present.
Tom Cleveland,
I'm here.
and Darla Light,
I'm here.
and Superintendent Jeff Bearden.
Present.
Do we have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved by Tom.
Second by Kristin.
We have a motion by Tom and a second by Kristin. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, motion passes. Do we have a motion to approve personnel A 1 through 14, B 1 through 2, and C 1 through 12?
So moved by Tom.
Second.
We have a motion by Tom and a second by Darla. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, motion passes. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second by Tom.
We have a motion by Darla and a second by Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing no opposition, motion passes. Meeting adjourned.